I believe we have a presenter in the room already. I was looking through the list. I believe Mr. Lobo, that I gave you co-host privileges, so you should be able to share your screen. And I had a second person down as a host or as a presenter.
That's for me, Drew.
Drew, okay, great. I will also make you the co-host, make you a co-host. So if you need to share your screen, you'll have that ability too.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've got a couple more minutes. Can you tell me when you're doing your presentation, would you like to have the participants put their questions in the chat? Do you want them to raise their hand, save the questions till the end? What's your question procedure that you prefer?
Sure. So for us, best is always to have it in the chat, but if they do have questions, it looks like it'll be a manageable group, so they can raise their hand. And then if it fits in with the flow of the presentation, we might be able to call on people in real time.
Okay. All right, we can do that. I'm going to okay, I guess we can go ahead and get started with especially the housekeeping items. We will, let's see. Oh, just a reminder that your sketch forms, you can turn them in at the end of the day today for the entire day. If you participated in yesterday's sessions will also be turned in today. You can always visit our MACAE website for important information, updates, links to these presentations afterwards. All of the recordings will be posted to, I believe, YouTube in the future. Let's see. And we do encourage you to be on camera so that we can create a community of learning, and also to put any questions you have into the chat. We'll try to address them as they come up. It is a fairly small group size here. And thank you everyone for attending. Hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to turn it over to our host, Mr. Lobo and Mr. Robinson.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having us. I'm Drew with Learning Upgrade, joined today with founder and CEO of Learning Upgrade, Vinod Lobo. And today we're going to be talking about Learning Upgrade and really some of the life-changing education that we've been bringing to refugees around the globe. So we're a San Diego-based company, and we've been in adult education for quite a while. So we work with adult schools, community colleges, literacy centers, libraries. But over the last decade or so, we started partnering with some of the local refugee organizations. And so that started with the Umi Learning Center and the Somali Bantu Association. And what we started to see there is the power of Learning Upgrade and how it was able to take pre-literate students that were new arrivals in the United States with no exposure to English and very quickly get them up to full proficiency to where they're now taking college credit-bearing courses. And so we're going to be walking you through that today and giving you an overview of Learning Upgrade. And then also we do offer free pilots for Learning Upgrade. So everybody in attendance today will be able to do that. We do have QR codes here in the slide. So this will take you to our homepage if you just want to learn a little bit more about Learning Upgrade. But you'll also have an opportunity at the end to scan the QR code to take you to the free pilot. So we'll share the link in the chat for that as well. But again, I'm Drew. Vinod, we're not joined by our buddy Mariano today. He's in New York, has a little bit of a different schedule for today, but Vinod and I are more than happy to be joining you. So to introduce Learning Upgrade, to really encapsulate what it is in one image, it really is all about life-changing education. And so how do we do that? So the first component of our life-changing education is our breakthrough app, the Learning Upgrade app. And with Learning Upgrade, we provide access to English, math, and job skills. So we have our full English track, we have our math track from basic all the way up through algebra. And then with our job skills, we have digital literacy. And then coming soon, we also have our financial literacy, our work-life skills, and then also citizenship. So we'll be covering the breakthrough app, how you can get 4x learning speed for your learners, how we use our engaging song, video, and games to drive binge learning. And then for you as admins, teachers, and coordinators, that's where we're going to do a dive into the LMS and how you can utilize our powerful reporting tools to get real-time growth reports, track your students as they move through our courses. Also, how you can scale. So our program is highly scalable. We know that a lot, especially with our refugees, volunteers, tutors, teachers, there aren't always enough to meet the need. And so what we're able to do is with a highly scalable product, it doesn't matter how many individuals are in your community that need access to our courses, minimum 50 to 1. In a lot of our situations, we're seeing 250 to 300 to 1 ratios because our LMS has standardized everything. You can essentially send out all the login credentials, track and monitor their progress, all the way up through certificate proficiency with the LMS. And then the free to start. So, we can serve 10x learners, whatever you're currently serving at a minimum. And that's going to allow you to scale rapidly. And our pilots do provide access to all courses, all lessons, and training. So just a little overview on Learning Upgrade. We've served over 3 million students. A few years ago, we were the X Prize winners. So that's the Adult Literacy X Prize. And the Adult Literacy X Prize, for those that aren't familiar, it was a $7 million competition hosted by Dollar General that essentially put out a big question to the world, which was, can we find an online and equitable way to improve learning scores, English learning scores amongst low literate adults? So they used CASAS as the standard there and said, CASAS 210 or below, we're going to give them a pretest. We're going to randomly assign them the finalist apps. And then the app at the very end of this competition will be declared the winner. So it was a massive field test. There were 12,000 adult learners that were a part of this in major metropolitan cities in the United States. And at the end, we were the grand prize winners because we were able to get the highest number of those low literate adults up to proficiency. So it's a global solution for all ages. So this is really important with refugees. With refugees, these tend to be families a lot of the time. And if not full families, members of families, communities that are, in transit together. So we do 2-gen learning as well. We can work with adults, we can work with high school age, we can even work with younger students. And so we really want to help facilitate that 2-gen family learning. We meet all the federal standards, and so we'll be able to talk about some of those alignments that we have available for you as well. It is, we say the Learning Upgrade app, that breakthrough student app. It is available on iOS, so Apple devices, Android devices, and then also on the web. And then we do push notifications. So for those of you that don't get to interact with your students or your refugees in real time, our LMS allows you to push notifications via text message, WhatsApp to their phones. And so even if they aren't currently in your city, in your country, in your region, but they're going to be coming soon, for those that would like to have your students get an early start on Learning Upgrade, we have you covered there as well. And then like I mentioned, we cover the English, math, and job skills. So before we get into Learning Upgrade, we always like to tell some stories. And this is Studio, and she's a part of the UMI Learning Center in San Diego. And this was a unique situation, pre-literate, and pretty much every challenge that you can imagine when you're in adult ed. So at home, 7 children, and a new arrival. So really struggling on every level. Time is constrained, resources are constrained. And so you're really looking at, okay, how can we find a way to give her all of the education that she needs without requiring her to drive into a college or an adult school, which is fantastic when students can do that. But as we all know, over COVID, and even now with the way gas prices are, trying to get a student that can afford to drive into a campus, if they have children or they have a job, to be able to build that around their schedule, it's a real challenge. So what Studio was able to do was coming into the center on the weekends and in the evenings with her children, start learning on Learning Upgrade. And so she started out, she took the pre-assessment. We put her in English Basic and Math Basic, essentially the lowest courses we offer. And she was able to work through from basic all the way up to full proficiency in 18 months. So a journey that, a best case scenario would have looked like a full 5 years in adult ed. She was able to take care of in 18 months and is now able to take online credit-bearing courses at the local community college. And so this is incredible because this is something that we see in adult ed classrooms. This is what teachers fantastic at doing. But how do we scale this up? How do we make this available to millions? And so that's what we've really set out to do, with adult schools, community colleges, but also partnering with community NGOs. And so the one story I want to share with you today is with an NGO we've been working with that just started last year, and that's Focus Humanitarian Assistance. So they're a part of a global NGO. This is their regional office that's based out of Canada. And so we started with Focus Humanitarian. They essentially just gave us a call and said, listen, we're currently using a program called Off to Class, and it just does not scale. One of our educators is paired with anywhere from 5 to 10 students. And because they're a volunteer organization, it's incredibly difficult to recruit teachers, credentialed teachers. Teachers are very busy. You barely have 5 minutes in your day to do anything else. And so we understand that, they understand that, and that's always the big challenge. And so they said, we need to work with Learning Upgrade to find a solution. We have thousands of Afghan refugees that were just displaced this year. And it's something that we're currently in conversations with other organizations about the situation in Ukraine. But last year, this was it in Afghanistan. So there's, thousands, tens of thousands going to every country. And so in Turkey, they said, let's do a pilot. We have 50 to 80 students we'd like to look at. And so what we did is we just sent out a survey to these 50 students. And what ended up happening is they ended up sending it with friends and family on WhatsApp. And before we knew it, we had a pilot of 800 students. And for those of you that have ever tried to run a pilot, you try to keep them small. But at the same time, in this situation, we didn't want to say no to anybody. And so we said, okay, well, let's try to figure out how to do an 800 student pilot. Well, long story short, we moved past the pilot period, and we're no longer just in Turkey. We're also in use in Afghanistan. We're in use in Syria. We're in use with refugees in Greece. And then recently the GCC countries, starting with UAE, Dubai, Qatar, and we'll be expanding from there. And so I want to just really focus on, why they have chosen Learning Upgrade for their refugee population and how it's been successful. So number one, it's a volunteer-run organization. And so like I mentioned, credentialed teachers are tough to come by for them. And so they rely on volunteers. And with one volunteer, at the minimum, they can manage 50 to 100 students, upwards of 250 students now. So how do they do that? Well, they use WhatsApp. And so for community, all of these volunteers are based in Canada. None of them are actually in Turkey when we got started. And so they had to do all of this virtually. They had to do it all remotely. So they built WhatsApp communities, shared credentials there, and then were able to track and monitor the students. What we ended up seeing is as the students moved through Learning Upgrade and got their certificates in English and math proficiency, those we called high flyers, now they're the new tutors and coaches. And so it's a cycle that helps feed itself because all of our high flyers from Turkey are now bringing up the students in other countries. In a 6-month period, we ended up onboarding right around 2,000 learners from Turkey, and they finished 348,000 lessons. They did 44,000 hours on Learning Upgrade, and they earned 12,000 certificates. And so a certificate is a full 60-lesson course, covers a full grade level of academic content, and this is just in a 6-month period. So that really goes to show, just how much of a binge learning factor there is with our app. So here's a look. One of the things a lot of programs will talk about when they talk success is they'll say, we did a really good job of bringing students up to, whatever their benchmark is. The problem with almost every other program is that they really try to forget this lowest group here. And so, this is an international organization, so they use SEFR. I put the NRS ESL alignment in here as well so that you can see how that matches up. and then also CASAS scores. So when we first started working with these 800 students, you'll see that all of them, pretty much 92% are at this pre-A1. So that's basic. You're working at an NRS ESL level 1, a 180 or below on CASAS. So again, these are students with no exposure to English. They've never been in an English class. They're new arrivals. This is the very first time they're attempting to learn this language. For anybody that's ever attempted to learn a language, I've attempted a few times, a little more successful, lately than I was when I was younger, but it's a real challenge. And that's purely for fun. I'm going on vacation, or I want to do it because I think it's entertaining. Whereas for these individuals, this is life. This is, hey, I'm in a new country. This is my opportunity to get a job. This is an opportunity to provide for my family, to assist my children with their homework and make sure that they have a better life than I had. So this isn't, the sense of urgency here is critical. So again, in a 6-month period, what we were able to do is take what was a 92% cohort for the pre-A1. And then you can see when we did our post-test, just how different the breakdown is amongst those 800 students. We're down to 16%. But key is now we're at 21.5% for that C1. And so that's going to be, where someone is deemed proficient, and they're here up above 6 now for that NRS ESL with a 235 or above CASAS score. And so this is critical for this organization because, again, their goal is repatriation, refugee self-reliance. For those of you that are familiar with that Refuge Point self-reliance index for refugees. But education is a keystone of this. In order to get our learners competent with financial literacy, understanding credit, navigating healthcare, reading prescriptions, navigating any kind of a citizenship test, everything, when you boil it down, there might be 10 categories, but it really is about English first for those in English speaking countries, math skills. And then once you really empower a student with English and math, that's when they can focus on the job skills, digital literacy, and the financial literacy. And so this just gives you an idea of what's possible. Again, really focus on, number one, 800 students. Now we're scaling up to thousands. But more importantly, for those of you that maybe had a difficult time reaching the students that were at that new arrival, emerging, reader, emerging learner, pre-A1, this is a program that works for everybody. So what is the app? Okay, obviously we've been validated by the X Prize and we have, our white papers and data to support it. But really, what Learning Upgrade is, it's a simple to use, it's an easy to use app. And so this is what it looks like for the students. These are the 24 available courses. And so we break things down into our categories. We have our English, math, our skills, and then our test prep, which we'll talk about a little later. I'm going to have Vinod talk about the full strand of courses in a little bit, and how that works for moving students from low income up to higher earning income. But we have the 24 courses from basic to diploma. Every single one of these courses has 60 lessons each. Students get assessed at the beginning. So the very first time they log in, they're not going to see the courses. They'll get an assessment. The assessment will find out their current English level, and then we're going to enroll them in the appropriate English course. So you don't have to worry about that. Again, for a lot of our new arrivals, that's a challenge. Some of them listen to English music, or they watch TV. And so they do have some familiarity with English. Others may have actually learned English in an academic setting. Maybe they've been in the States for a few years and they've tried, but nothing has really worked. And so we want to make sure we're getting them at the appropriate level. Same thing with math. Big one is we record thousands of pieces of audio for every single lesson. So there's built-in feedback and remediation. And the app is available anytime, anywhere for your students. So this is key. Again, they have children. A lot of them have jobs, demanding jobs. And so if they can log in at 10 p.m. to 3 a.m., which is something that all of our students are doing, that's the binge learning. That's what you're going to find is having access to this app at any time when it fits into their schedule is key. So we do have lesson lists for those of you that are interested in every single Learning Upgrade lesson. We can share links with these, but they're also on our homepage. If you just go to learningupgrade.com and click courses, you'll be able to view those. And this is just going back to those federal standards that we meet. Again, this is a standards-based course. And so a lot of people, especially for the international, say, what's the difference between this and say like a Rosetta Stone or a Duolingo or a Babbel or any of those other platforms, and those are language acquisition. So again, they're fantastic for vacation, learning a few phrases, where's the restaurant, how do I take the bus, but they're not going to teach learners academic English. They're not going to break down verb conjugations and actually get into grammar. So how do I pass an academic English class, with a teacher in an education institution? That's not what those are for. Those are just language acquisition. Learning Upgrade is academic English. We cover every single federally required standard, and that's really what sets us apart there. So you see we have the CCRS standards, CEFR for the international NGO, and then also the CASA standards. So we won't get too much into detail there, but yeah, on the courses page of Learning Upgrade, if you'd like to download those PDFs, and you can see how all of our courses aligned. We also have our placement tables. So if you'd like to see, based on CCRS, Table 11, 12 CASAs, how they map up to our courses, we also have that available. So the next thing that really makes Learning Upgrade special is engagement. And so this is the binge learning. Learners have to want to get on. Now, we know motivation can be tough. Assigned readings, PDFs, getting students to spend time, that tends to be the differentiating factor between making, rapid, accelerated improvement in a subject area and not, is how much time can you apply to this? And so what we do is we gamify the experience and we make it just like, everything else in their life. So most of us are on some social media platform, whether that be Instagram, TikTok, which I am sadly feeling like I'm a little too old for, and any other platform that you use. But, the key there is it's all bite-sized. Long gone are the days of logging into YouTube and watching a 2-hour experience. That's dedicated purely for TV, and that's a different experience. Media consumption is moved to bite-sized learning. And so Learning Upgrade really taps into that. Every single one of these lessons starts out with instruction. It's in the form of songs, video, and games, so we keep them entertained with the instruction. But again, we still meet all the content standards. After the instruction, they're going to answer practice questions. Every single one has built-in feedback and remediation. They get to see how the questions are answered if they do get it incorrect. But this combination of high engagement instruction, bite-sized lessons, that's what's going to drive the binge learning. And that's how we get the accelerated growth for your learners. So here's just a look of what that engagement looks like. And you'll see a little bit of the instruction. Again, this comes to life. It's not like a workbook, which a lot of our English learners have a tough time with, when it's just, page after page after page of black and white text, no animation, no context. They really need a teacher, a tutor, a coach there in real time to walk them through that. And that's fantastic when that's available, but that's not an option for every student, and it's not a scalable solution. So what Learning Upgrade does is it puts the power of the tutor, the coach, the teacher in their pocket, in their smartphone. So here's a look at what the accelerated learning looks like. What we tend to shoot for is you say, okay, if we can just get 1 hour on Learning Upgrade a week, we can cut our time in half. It's usually going to take you an entire year to get through a year of academic content. But we can see if we can get an hour a week, we're going to cut that in half. If we can get 2 hours a week, we'll be able to get 2 courses done. And then our goal for that pilot in Turkey was, let's get 4 hours a week. And crazy enough, for that entire cohort of 800 students, almost everybody was doing more than 10 hours a week. And it was a unique situation. Those refugees had just arrived in Turkey. Many were unemployed. And again, they're highly motivated to move out of Turkey into Canada or elsewhere. But it just goes to show what's possible with the app. So now I'm going to have Vinod tell you a little bit about the Learning Upgrade path and how we want to guide students, regardless of where they are, up to full proficiency.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. Thanks, Stacy, for having us here. And what I wanted to go through here is, we realized after we put close to 5,000 refugees, Afghan refugees, through our program, that we had something very interesting going on. And that was, we were moving people on a path, a path that went all the way from basic literacy, all the way through up to jobs, higher education, college. And this was happening at a certain pace that was really a breakthrough. So if you look at this path here, It goes all the way from, CASAS 180, NRS level 1 on the ESL scale at the bottom. The EB is our very basic course, which teaches letter sounds and alphabet, phonics, numbers 1, 2, 3, and you're going all the way up through. So there's key things about this graph. Number one, each course takes 25 hours to complete, and each course is one NRS level. So that means your clients, your students who are refugees or children of refugees can make one NRS gain every 25 hours, okay? Now, how does that translate? Drew just showed you the previous graph. If you're doing it at every 25 hours, well, what if you could do 25 hours of work in 3 months, which is 2 hours a week, right? So what if you're doing 2 hours a week? Every 3 months, you're making an NRS level gain. Think about that. That means every year, you're making 4 NRS level gains in English, and you could do the same thing in math. So we can now bring a student dramatically up those NRS levels. So what are the milestones? The milestones are they start at ESL beginner, let's say. Now they get to English 3, that's basic literacy. So in 100 hours, they could be sort of at a basic level. Then over the next 100 hours, they're getting up to English 5, then taking our TOEFL or IELTS course, which is more advanced, then starting our math courses. And our math courses, by the way, go all the way up to algebra. So even though you start 1, 2, 3, you're finishing at a GED level. Then all of a sudden they go into our GED reading course, which is designed for science, social studies, reading, and writing so that they pass that test. Absolutely designed for HiSET and GED. They take the GED math, now they can pass their GED like Studio did earlier. Okay, now we're 200, 250 hours in. We've taken someone all the way from ABC 1, 2, 3 to a GED. After that, we have a digital literacy course, which meets the ISTE and North Star standards. This is something we're very proud of, everything from cybersecurity to learning Google Docs to you name it. And then after that, work-life soft skills, which is our brand new course coming out in a few months, and then financial literacy. So you can see over a period of 300 hours, 350 hours, someone could completely change their lives. And what we have found over the years is that people have very low expectations. Usually in library literacy programs, people come in an English beginner. All they're trying to do is get them to basic literacy. No one's, the volunteers and others are not trying to get them all the way to GED or, that level. And then you have other students just on the bubble of GED that you're just trying to push through. What we would like to, share with the world is you can take a student from anywhere along this line, and you can get them all the way up to the top. Have high expectations, move people all the way through. And the US government has data showing how income goes up as you do this path, from extreme poverty to low income to middle income. And also a lot of data on just basic family success, how the children do better once the parents move up this path. But I think the key thing here is time. What we've realized is that we're no longer limited by the calendar. Oh, you can only do one class a semester. Oh, you can only do this one thing. You're limited by the calendar of an adult school or something else. Now it's just how many hours you want to put in. Do you want to fly through this whole thing and make huge gains fast? And now you can do it.
All right, so thank you, Vinod. That really helps crystallize the importance of that full track and, why Vinod and the R&D team spend so much time on really building out a fully featured platform. It's not just English, it's not just math. We don't just specialize in the students ready for GED. our goal for the global reach is to make sure, like he said, that any single student, regardless of where they're starting, has that path to full proficiency. And that was one of the things we heard time and time again with a lot of programs having to adopt remote programs over the last 2.5 years, is fragmentation was a challenge. For their low literate students, they'd adopt one technology platform. For their students for GED, it's another. Then for digital literacy, it's another one. And so one of the critical things with Learning Upgrade is with one app, one platform, you'll be able to provide access to students in all of these different pathways. So now let's talk about the next one, the LMS that drives the growth and impact. We have an industry-leading LMS. It's brand new. We just built this one last year and still adding features essentially every 2 or 3 weeks, new reports, new features to really help amplify your reach as teachers, as admins, directors, coordinators, whatever your role may be. We have role-based logins to really make sure that the tutors just have a simple platform. You'll see that at the top right, very similar to Google Classroom, where you just get a grid view of classes. And here the focus is, let's just track and monitor my student activity. And then at the bottom, we do have dashboards, help you dive in on KPIs, track your license, get ready there. But from the onset, teachers are going to create classes. They'll be able to view session logs, progress report, device usage. And I want to show you some of that live here in a bit. Here we go. And so, what does it look like to get started with Learning Upgrade? So as I mentioned, we have free pilots. The key to any successful deployment, not just for Learning Upgrade, but everyone knows, you guys have been doing enough technology integration over the last few years that onboarding is key. How do you get a new adoption of a platform? The biggest hurdle is getting it into students' hands, getting students to use it. Once that takes off, everything else is easy. Then it's just tracking and monitoring, verifying the fidelity of usage, and then celebrating student success. So I just want to walk you through a few pieces on how we do that. So number one, we'll create the classes. We have easy one-click options for onboarding students. And one of the key features that really helps us with refugees is being able to track growth. And so what you'll see here is it doesn't matter how many Learning Upgrade courses they're going through. With student report cards, you're going to be able to see every single course they're working on, when they're logging in, how much time they've spent. So we can see here for English Upgrade 1, they spent 29 hours earning the bronze certificate, spent about 38 hours earning a gold for algebra. And then we can see how many lessons they've completed for those. This is a demo. So, you probably won't see students working simultaneously on low-level English and high-level math. But, it actually does come about sometimes. With migrant education, Central America, a lot of the students are actually highly proficient in math, but they're just learning English. And then they're not doing well in their math courses, no fault of their own. It has nothing to do with their math skills. Then once they accelerate their English learning, we find out, what? It was just word problems that were tripping them up, or it was just, reading questions. And so for our refugees, usually not the case. They tend to start, learning the English and math together. But this report is going to give you a very good idea of how they're doing. You'll also see these snapshots of growth. So we'll see their current English level, their current math level, and then their proficiency across these subsets. So their fundamentals, comprehension, vocab, spelling, grammar, writing, listening, and speaking. So again, even if they're working on multiple Learning Upgrade courses, you can see exactly how they're doing on their report card. Report cards are available for all students. Another powerful tool that you'll be able to see here is our ability to, let's go to localize languages. And so one of the things we've done over the past few months, especially for our refugee population, is to make sure that they can get all of the onboarding instructions in a language they're familiar with. And this is really helping drive engagement early. If those refugees from Afghanistan get DARI instruction, they get DARI onboarding, they're able to take this without any exposure to English and instantly start our full immersion courses right away. So currently we have Urdu, Arabic, DARI, Spanish, and English. And if there are other courses that you need, just let us know. We'll be able to get translations done for the onboarding and make sure that your students have access to that. All right, so for the next one here, let's move on. What you'll see is that we also have full in-class instruction with our teacher whiteboard. And so for the teacher role, there's just 3 tabs. We have classes, teacher whiteboard, and reports. most of the activity is going to take place in classes. But for the teacher whiteboard, that's an unlocked version of everything Learning Upgrade has to offer. So if you ever want to use this for some online instruction or one-on-one time, you can use it for that. This is also what a lot of our tutors and coaches use. So if you have, tutors, coaches, if you're at a literacy center and you don't have credentialed staff that can work with your refugees, but they are there to help facilitate learning, this is a great way for them to, kind of play that role. They get this standards-based instruction. And this is what a lot of our online groups are doing in Turkey. Those high flyers I talked about, they don't know how to teach, but what they can do is go through the teacher whiteboard, go through a few lessons, and then facilitate, number one, discussion, and then number two, go through the practice questions as a group, and they can build that community classroom experience, even in the absence of a credentialed instructor. Next thing we'll cover is reports. So again, the first thing that you'll get to see is the licensing. The next is we have just a time on task slider dashboard, so you can see just overall how much time your students are spending each day. And then below that, we have reports that you can click on, student monitor, student progress. So I don't want to do too much of a deep dive here. What we tend to do is, get started with a pilot. We get your students onboarded, and then we'll cover these. This is the student progress report, covers time on task, certificate reports. So when students complete courses, we want to make sure we can get those printed, celebrate student success. We can send those via email, text, or WhatsApp. Our growth report, you saw the individual growth reports for the student report cards, but we also have these for entire classes, or for admins, you can view these for an entire site or organization with hundreds or thousands of students. You'll be able to see exactly how much growth your students are achieving in a set time period, and also, run aggregate data on entire sites to see if you're doing regional, if you're at a library, how different branches are doing. If it's a refugee center, what Focus is doing is they actually break their classes down by pre-test. So there's that pre-A1 or that NRS level 1, NRS level 2, and so their cohorts are based on that. So it's usually a fantastic report to see the growth on that NRS level 1. They tend to make the most growth, but it's also important to see those that are testing high early, what they're moving on to. They get proficient in English, and then they tend to jump into our math courses right away. And so these growth reports will really help you track that and see how much progress they're making. So now we're looking at the org report. And so as an organization admin, you're going to have access to different tabs. And so for those of you, again, if you're at a library, you need to do multiple branches. If you're at anything that needs a hierarchy of licensing or activation, our LMS does support that. Again, we tend to focus follow-up webinars, trainings on those features. But really in this presentation, just want to let you know that they are available. And so for those of you that would like access to those, feel free to reach out, get started with a pilot, and we'll be able to move you through there. So when we talked about scale early, one of the features that we recently added that's allowed us to do that in mass is our ability to push these notifications. So just as a show of hands, you don't have to do it if you don't have your camera on, or you can use the emoji, but how many of you are utilizing email, text, and WhatsApp to engage with your learners? Not too many, few? Well, perfect. Most of you know that almost all of our low-literate adults, refugees, the percentage of them that use WhatsApp as their primary form of communication is higher than any other. In most of our surveys, especially internationally, it's 90% plus. In the States, it's a little lower. On iPhones, everybody uses iMessage, but essentially anybody with an Android phone, domestically, internationally, is on WhatsApp. So building out groups there is critical, but more importantly, what we're able to do is push notifications. So when you get started, you have a few options for onboarding. Number one is we provide you a spreadsheet. You put the student information in there, their contact information, and what you're able to do is instantly generate student accounts with that upload, and then they'll be in the system. And then using the contact info, you can push out their credentials, again, in their first language, which is critical, and then they'll be able to get logged in. So what this allows us to do is it doesn't really matter if you're starting with 500, or 5,000 students. the onboarding with Learning Upgrade will take you anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes once you have that spreadsheet. Really the most time-consuming thing is deciding which students are going to use Learning Upgrade, finding their contact information if it's not already in a database that you have access to at your school. And then once that's uploaded into our LMS, everything is quick and easy because you'll be able to just send out that information. So it's not just the onboarding and credentialing that you can do with this. You can also send out their certificates and their report cards. And so that's a great way to keep students motivated. Again, one of the major pain points we heard from teachers in the remote setting is, they do their instruction, attendance was a little down in that, engagement was tough. But then in the time that they weren't meeting with their students, it was tough to keep them motivated. It was tough to keep them going. So with our system, we want to provide you with all the tools to make sure that can happen. Again, it's available on iOS, Android, and the web. And again, for any of you that would like to do a deep dive on the reporting, since we've just covered the basics, for those of you that get started with a pilot, just let us know, and we'll be more than happy to do a deep dive there.
Drew, I'm sorry. We do have a question. Angela has her hand raised. Angela, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Sure.
So it sounds like this would be a great thing for the high school completion as well as the ESL population. I was wondering then, so does it have like courses, actual high school classes that they take, or would it just be meeting the standards for the high school completion for like the GED, or like, I just wondered how that would work. The standards, to meet the standards for a diploma.
Yeah, I can take that. Thanks, Angela. Basically, we're not trying to give them credit so that they, earn a diploma credit-wise. What we're trying to do is help them pass a credential test, like a GED or a HiSET or a task. The key for that is that we specially designed the GED reading course to cover the GED and HiSET reading, writing, social studies, and science portions of the test. Then we designed the GED math course to cover the math portion of the test. And as most of you know, it's the math that is the gatekeeper on the GED and HiSET. It's the math that people fail. But the other part is very valuable. We combine that. What we've realized over the years, though, is the reason people fail the GED is often not the GED material, but all the material they need to know before the GED. That's why we encourage people who are, teachers who are working with GED classes to actually have them go through Learning Upgrade and take a pre-test and move up in math, sometimes from 5th grade or 6th grade all the way up through the GED math. And in English, sometimes 4th or 5th, all the way up to GED reading. Because if they don't have good fundamentals, as you know, you can't just throw them into algebra if they don't know what a negative number is. So I hope that answers your question on the GED and the HiSET. The second question that we got was from Melissa, talking about non-literate adults. How do you onboard non-literate adults, or how do you get them going? This has actually been a big thing for us. Our program, as you probably guessed, is not just for ESL, but it's also for young children starting to read, or people with socioeconomic issues or special needs who need to read. So we start from the beginning. We start from the alphabet and letter sounds. We have had a lot of success with non-literate adults. For example, many of the Bantu refugees from Somalia are not literate in Bantu, and we've had a lot of success with them. Also with Haitian refugees from the earthquake 10 years ago who live in South Florida, we had a lot of success at Palm Beach. The challenge there is, how do you onboard them remotely, right? It's easier if you have them in person, then you can help them. Here's how you log in, here's how you type your password, maybe watch them do the first 3 or 4 lessons. But people like Focus have become very good at doing this remotely. with a combination of WhatsApp audio and Zoom, live Zoom sessions, and getting the people on the other end to have friends, relatives, others help them. Because the key is installing the app, logging in, and doing the first couple of lessons. We find after the first couple of lessons, once they know the alphabet and they start basic reading, boom, off they go. Drew, do you have anything extra to add to that part?
Yeah, I think the most enlightening one for me was, again, when we started that pilot, I thought it was going to be 40 or 50. And so it's okay, we're going to do a Saturday session. It's going to be in Turkey. So it was early morning for me on a Saturday. And we ended up having 300 on for a Zoom session. And so I actually conducted the training with a Dari translator. And then there was one of the volunteers from Focus. And so what we were able to do there is create the first group of high flyers. With the communities that already exist with our refugees, we find that critical mass is usually at around 40 to 50% of the group. Once we can get 40 to 50% trained, they're the ones that actually go and answer all the questions in the WhatsApp group and train up their colleagues. And so the key, though, was that first training with the Dari translator. And what we did is we just went live. We said, hey, here is your login credentials. This is what it looks like. All of you should have received this message via text, WhatsApp, or whatever their preferred contact method was. If you did not receive this, contact your lead in your group, this individual, and we put their name on. And again, the Dari speaker is translating this for everybody. And then we walk through, okay, most of them, all of us have 2 devices. So we're able to have our phone and probably on a computer now. But for them, Zoom is on the phone. So they can't do Zoom and log into Learning Upgrade. And so you have to, keep that in mind as well. But what we are able to do is walk them through what it will look like. So here's the app, click on this button. And the nice thing is our onboarding goes through all of this as well. We have screenshots of every screen in the app. And this is all in their localized language. So, even for the pre-literate, there's the images, there's the text, and then we also do the live instruction. So they get those 3 different pathways to getting started. And as Vinod mentioned, once they get started with the first lesson, what we learned from the X Prize, and this is, 3 years ago now, is it's our own experience. Just think of the last time you downloaded an app in the App Store. If it took you more than 3 or 4 minutes to figure out and get started, the likelihood you deleted it is probably 100%. I think we've all been there. We can't figure it out. It's difficult. So we said, hey, students should be able to download the app and get started in 3 to 5 minutes max. For an education platform, that tends to be the benchmark. Social media is a lot less forgiving. They want to get started even earlier. But for education, we want to keep them moving. So it's screen, 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 assessment, begin your lesson. And so this is something that, again, we've learned from education platforms, but mostly from entertainment platforms. We want to make sure that it has that same feel, that same vibe, and that same flow so that students download the app and get started. And it doesn't feel like they're filling out paperwork for an insurance claim. All right, so so now we'll talk about the pilot again, and this is going to be for any of you that would like to get started. I'm just going to have Vinod again come back, just because I have his picture here, and
there I am. Well, first of all, Dan from New Readers Press has put links to information about Learning Upgrade in the chat, and also links to a free trial, because any one of you, completely free 3-month trial with your students, you can get started like next week and start enrolling refugees and their children. So, and also your representative for New Readers Press, Elaine. You can actually see her email and her phone number in the chat. This was the Umi Learning Center with Somali Bantu on the right, and on the left was a pilot we did in India with a school where we enrolled all the janitorial and food service staff who didn't know English and got them moving. And I think the key thing to a pilot is that in 3 months, you could actually see 1 year of growth. You could actually see 1 NRS level of growth just during the free pilot. So we like to joke, oh, your first year growth is free. It's just something that we like to talk about. And the whole thing is, if you can get students started quickly, if you can motivate them, if you can follow up with them and make sure they get started, then this picture on the right of me with the Somali students handing out certificates only happened 3 months in from that pilot. And we handed out 44 certificates at this refugee center in San Diego just 3 months after the pilot started. They hadn't even started the full deployment. So yeah, I think it's quite easy to get started. For any of you who want to, click that link in the chat, and NRP&S will set up your pilot and get you moving fast.
Thanks, Vinod. So I just want to do just a brief overview on what it looks like. I know it helps me kind of crystallize when I can say, okay, let me see a sequence of what a deployment looks like. So number one is, obviously getting the pilot going. And so Dan has the information for Elaine there. Reach out to Elaine, get your pilot started. And then the next step is going to be training. And so I believe Rachel is on today, who is fantastic. I do a lot of trainings. I think the only person that's better at training than me is Rachel. And so you are in fantastic hands with my buddy, Rachel Buddy. So make sure to take advantage of her training. She's absolutely fantastic. And so you'll start out with the training. And then in that training, what she's going to cover is student onboarding. And so that'll cover, essentially a conversation first. How many students are you looking to work with? Do they have contact information? Because we do talk about the push notifications, but what we actually find most of our accounts using is student self-enrollment. So to simplify things, what our system also does is generate a single self-enrollment code, and there'll be a PDF, again, localized in the language, regardless of what it is. And then you can just send this one pager to all of your students. So if you have 5,000 students and you're not quite sure who's going to use it and who's not, that's the best one to use, because then you can just send it out. It has instructions for self-enrollment, and then Rachel's going to show you how to log into the LMS and see which students are actually utilizing that self-enrollment code for tracking. So we have a few options for onboarding. We did cover the push notifications today, but we also have self-enrollment, and that's an important one too. So after onboarding, then she'll talk about reporting. So, okay, my students are creating their accounts, they're logged in, they're getting started. What does it look like? How do we find out how they're doing? Which courses did they get enrolled in after the assessment? How many hours are they logging per week? What kind of growth are we seeing? So that's going to be covered in reporting. And then the final one is celebrating student success. So how to print off certificates and make sure that we're sending those to the students if we're not seeing them in person. So just to show you how easy it is to get started, for the self-enrollment, I just put together a little video of what it looks like. Again, our goal is to keep it simple. So you'll log in, you'll download the class guide, you can pick your language. So in this case, I was doing it for Afghan refugees, so we're in Dari. We see that 7-digit class code, the screenshots I mentioned as well. So we're going to walk them through everything. Even if they can't read in their first language, that's okay. They're going to get a chance to see exactly how to work through this. They're going to type their name in. And so here again, all of this is going to be documented in the instructions. Student ID or email, that's the not required field, but here we want to make sure they know that. So it's in the Adari instructions. They'll plug in their 7-digit class code. And again, we want to keep that flow moving. So they click go. Now we're going to show them their username, password, and school ID. This is how they can log in on any web-enabled device. There'll be a little demo video that they can skip if they have already seen it. They'll get their placement. Again, it's going to start at the very beginning. Simple question. So in this example, we're going to get everything wrong just so that we can get placed in basic very early. Now we'll see the placement is over. I'm placed in basic. You'll see that basic is now live, and boom, I'm into my first lesson. So that was about 2 or 3 minutes from the LMS of looking at it all the way up to the other. And now we'll see, we'll refresh, and the demo for first last with math placement still there. English K is live. I can see exactly how they did. I can see which courses they're working on. And all of this is done in just a few minutes. So again, if you're doing this with 5,000 students, it'll be the same. All of them will instantly be in your LMS, and it doesn't take many steps to get all your students up and running. All right, so that's it for us. If there are any more questions, I'd love to get those answered for you. Otherwise, thank you, Rachel and Dan. So Rachel's email is there, ourbuddy@proliteracy.org. And then Dan also put Elaine's in there. And so that's just Elaine at elainepardiak@elainepardiak.com. And then also her phone number is in there as well. And we'll be able to get you set up with pilots and training and anything else you need. So unless I'm missing any questions, anybody see any other questions in the chat that I missed?
Drew, there's one more question from Melissa. She was asking about what percentage of our students are children and versus adults. And so basically we're about 50-50 right now. We have a large number of US public school students who are either special needs or English learners. Because we meet all the state standards for US public K-12, we're pretty serious K-12 instruction all the way from kindergarten up that meet all the standards. So we used a lot by K-12, and then we're used a lot in adult ed, as well as by nonprofits and global NGOs for refugees and migrants. The interesting part there, which Melissa mentions in the chat, is how powerful it is to have two-gen learning. It's very common for organizations and schools to enroll mom, dad, and all the kids, each with their own password. We've even done this in migrant ed with farm workers, with all kinds of different situations. Drew has met with parents during parent night and enrolled, again, mom, dad, and all the kids. Often parents will come to us and say, can we do the GED courses, or can we do this? Oh, I can't help my child with math. Can we do middle school math? And often the children are ahead of the parents because they're more, they're going to school. So you are right, Melissa, that it's very powerful when you get everyone in the family to have their own Learning Upgrade login, because the whole family learns together. It's just it's sort of a magic that happens when you can make that happen.
Well, it sounds like I don't see any other questions or hands raised in the chats or in the participant box. So, and everybody's kind of probably hungry about this time, midday, it's lunchtime. So, but before I let you go, I just want to say thank you so much for presenting to our MACAE members this afternoon. Some great resource for many of our programs. And I do hope that you see some usage, some traffic, and the programs find another helpful resource. With that, I think just one last reminder that your sketch form will be emailed to you, and the presentation materials will be available on YouTube later, either today or honestly probably next week. But so with that, I guess we will say goodbye and enjoy the rest of your day. Everybody have a great lunch.
Thank you for having us, Stacy.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.